Sometimes life just spins out of control. It could be stress at work, it could be a relationship breakup, or it could be financial troubles, or it could just be something that you thought you could rely on that suddenly you can no longer rely on. But imagine if there was a way to bring the uncontrollable back under control. Health explorer Neil Fellows here from Total Wellness Club. To get healthy and fit and stay healthy and fit and do it in a way that's unique to you and natural, please subscribe and hit the bell to get notified of all of our latest uploads. With everything we've got going on right now in the world, many people could be struggling from a personal mental health crisis. But what can we do to find respite from the stress, the strains, the struggles, the anxiety and the fears? How can we regain control over our lives in a time of chaos, in a time of change, and in a time of upheaval? Joining me to discuss this is alternative life coach and house healer, Tim Walter. So, Tim, the last year has been pretty rubbish, to say the least, for most people. And there's still a lot of kind of stress and struggles around. What can people do to find a little bit of peace in their life?
Well, I think to say there's a little bit of stress and struggles around, I think that's a fairly major understatement. I think that this going back into lockdown and such a lockdown with such severity, which may well be required, but I think that has really hit a lot of people very hard. Mm-hmm. So those that got through last year and were in reasonable mental health, I think that a lot of people now actually are struggling. And it's almost made worse by the fact that the vaccines are there. So there was this wrong sort of feeling that the end was in sight. And then it's like, oh, it's all closed down again. So what can people do? The real concern, from my point of view, the real concern actually is about mental health rather than the physical aspect.
Yeah.
Because that has always been something that is, very much a more shocking kind of debilitating aspect to life. So the really big thing that everybody can do, most people can do, because we can't assume that everybody has the ability to do this, which is to get out into nature and really enjoy the natural world, and really enjoy it, really immerse in it, and really make good use of the time that we can spend out in nature, because it's been proven scientifically that there are physical and mental, good results of being out there. So, yeah.
Cool. So what would be some of the things that you would do or you would recommend for helping people to find that bit of space, a bit of peace in their life out with nature?
Well, I think if I think about people that perhaps live in a city, then clearly they have limited access to open space and to nature. And I guess when we're talking about nature, we're talking about a bit of parkland, a bit of greenery. That's the most important thing, and some trees. Trees are so incredibly important. And so what I would say is, because really, I tend to come at everything from a sort of a spiritual aspect, but obviously we've got the physical thing to think about, we've got the mental thing to think about, we've got the spiritual to think about. Now, if I was going to recommend action for people, it would be get out there and start to explore the natural world, those trees that you might have in a local park, in a way that you haven't done before, which actually is to just be incredibly mindful and spend a bit of time with that tree, with a large oak tree, for example. There's nothing, it's an incredible experience if you can actually tune in on some level to that energy of the oak tree. And so, in other words, you're using the tree as part of a meditation. So it's a meditative practice. A lot of people kind of freak out when we use the word meditation. But it's not difficult. It's just about focusing on the inner self, the inner universe, and breathing with it and being aware of it. So, yeah, that's what I would suggest.
For someone who's new to this, they might be thinking, he's talking about tree hugging here.
Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily have to be that, does it? Because it can actually be, you're out in nature, you're out in the woods if you can get out into it. And I think for me, it's just about partly slowing down. It's rather than going on a route march through nature. It's actually just taking the time to kind of like hear the stones or the gravel or something under your feet while you're walking, isn't it? As well as actually maybe being able to feel the softness of the air, because that's one of the things I always notice when you go into the woods. There is that wonderful softness around you, and maybe listening to the birds. I mean, it doesn't have to be sitting down in the middle of the trees with your legs crossed in the lotus position, like a guru. It's not really about that, is it? You can actually just kind of stand up, keep your eyes open, and still take it in. It doesn't have to be any kind of sort of meditation.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, tree hugging's got a really bad rap. I mean, it has, because it goes back to when you and I would have been children, and it's like the typical hippie that looks an absolute mess and is just there going off with the fairies hugging a tree. So no, you don't. It's exactly as you say. It's about being mindful. I mean, I think it's funny, actually. It's interesting that tree hugging actually, as I say, some decades ago had that image, but actually now, it's quite a cool thing to do, just to go into the woods and chill and just accept that you're part of this picture and do exactly what you say. I mean, that description of the softer air, that's lovely, because that captures it perfectly, because it's about that awareness. And the great, sorry, I just want to interrupt you, because there's one thing in lockdown, right? In lockdown, there's a tendency for those that have not been used to working at home and have been working solidly in the corporate environment. They'll be, clocking on at their desk at the allocated time, suit and tie, maybe not. But the point is, they'll look at the idea of getting out in nature as actually, that's something I've got to do. I've got to go and do that now. It's 10 o'clock. That's my time to get out there and do it. Right, I'm going to be out for 45 minutes and I'll be back. But they don't make use. It's completely different doing that, going out, ignoring things, than going out and just gently, maybe at a set time, but just gently really allowing everything else to fade away from you in those moments, which is what will happen. Yeah.
Sure. I'm talking about tree hugging, just to say I'm absolutely nothing against tree hugging at all. If you're into that, fantastic. I have tree hugged, I'll admit that. Little funny story really with that. Many years ago, there was a group of friends that we were out it's about 10 o'clock at night, and we were hugging a massive oak tree. There was 8 of us trying to get around this tree, and we'd just finished, and we were climbing back over the fence to get back into the car as a police car came along. And he said, look, we've been hearing that there's some bikers around tonight, and we wondered if you'd seen them. And we were like, no, we haven't seen it. I was just like one leg cocked over the fence at this time, kind of frozen as the police were speaking to us. And the policeman then just says, do you mind if I ask what you're doing? And quick as a flash, one of the ladies in the group just said, tree hugging. And he just went, oh, okay, and wound his window up and went. So it's obviously it's quite a normal thing if the police kind of deal with it in that way, is my view. Tim, you mentioned being outdoors. We've talked about being out in nature, being out amongst the trees, but we do have some sort of restrictions in that there's a distance that we maybe should or shouldn't travel right now.
Yeah.
So for people with a garden, let's talk about that. I mean, what can people, obviously there's gardening people can do, but I guess the same principles apply in terms of slowing down, taking your time to be out in the garden rather than doing a
quick walk round,
quick march around your garden.
Yeah. I mean, yes. I mean, for those that are in the UK, and obviously this goes worldwide, so it doesn't necessarily apply to everybody, but I think even people in the USA, they can pick up the rather wonderful BBC program called Gardener's World. And Monty Dunn presents that. Now, Monty has a fantastic reputation, not only for his knowledge as a gardener, but also for the fact that he suffered from mental health disability, let's call it a disability, I mean it's mental health illness, some time ago, and it's really what gardening really helped him pull through that phase. So he has a terrific understanding of what gardening can do for people. Now the thing is, I'm late 50s, right? So even 10 years ago, I wouldn't actually have paid any notice really to my garden. The idea of sitting down and watching Gardener's World, watching Monty Don at work in the garden would have been like, whoa, I can feel myself aging just as I turn the TV on. You know, it's like, well, I really don't want to know. So, but now, as you get older, you realise that actually the power of working with plants and actually getting your fingers in the earth. Now, of course, the thing is that we're recording this in the middle of winter here in the UK, so Northern Hemisphere, we're I mean, my garden at the moment is under 8 inches of snow, so I'm not going to get out there, you know, today. But when you can get out, the process of growing things, there is absolutely nothing like it. The process of buying some seeds. Now, last year, I've started getting in the habit of growing sunflowers just because they're dramatic and they grow fast. It's a real kids thing to do. And last year I couldn't get some sunflower seeds to plant because everybody had got into gardening. So in the first lockdown, seed shops were just out of these things. So luckily we had one that self-sowed, so I enjoyed that. But the positive benefits of growing things and ideally growing from seed and, you know, looking after it even in the house and then getting out there and planting it and watching it grow. It is like having a little child, but I think, like I've said before, so much easier working with plants and vegetables because they don't answer back. You haven't got to have an argument with them. You just, you know, express love to them when you want to. But they will reward you if you do that. Again, that sounds very tree huggy-ish. But the bottom line is that if you can take your sort of exercise and add to it by actually really nurturing the space that you've got, if you're lucky enough to have a garden, then that can't be beaten for physical, mental, and spiritual, reward. I think it's terrific. You don't have to be in your 50s to enjoy it.
Just thinking, it really mostly comes down to actually just being able to take your mind off whatever it is that causes you stress, or, you know, even if you're not thinking about that stressful thing, but you've moved on to something else. But the opportunity to rest your brain just for a few minutes, to nurture a plant, you know, whether it's planting a seed or whether it's actually trimming something, knowing that it's going to come back again in a few months' time, can actually be fantastic for your well-being. And actually, I think as well, for me, in terms of like taking care of my own garden, it's one of those things that when you have time to sit in it as well, and actually admire the work that you've done, or seeing how, you know, nice it looks, can actually be quite satisfying as well. So there's a sense of achievement.
There is, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And not only that sense of achievement, you know, because most people enjoy having accomplished something and completed something, but there's also an incredible feeling of joy about it as well, that kind of emotional response. The other thing is, of course, sorry, interrupting your flow slightly, but one of the things is that when you start to look at the garden, you know, if you're sitting there relaxing, maybe with a nice alcoholic beverage, don't overdrink, of course, but and Jamie Lee Grace wouldn't agree with me mentioning the alcoholic content, but so a small soft drink. As you look at the garden around you where you've worked, if you start to sort of mentally frame, you know, put a picture frame in your head around bits, you actually start to see how beautiful, how aesthetically beautiful it is. And that can lead you into things like photography, or even, you know, even think about picking up a sketchbook and maybe having a go at drawing this particular rose, or you know, or painting it. They call it botanicals, don't they? In painting circles, they're really into botanicals. But that takes you into another aspect of how to enjoy the plants and the garden, because it also enables you to be creatively satisfied. And you never know, you might discover, you know, some real talent there that you've ignored since you were a school kid. You know,
That's a Really interesting thought, actually, Tim. Just taking that, that step further. First of all, yes, get out in nature, but then what could you do in nature while you're there? I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to be just the walk, like you say. It could be photography or even art. That sometimes we do forget, don't we? The talents or the passions that we had. And even if you're not the most talented drawer, but you fancy having a go, well,
That's exactly it, really, because it doesn't matter, because most of us are not, we're not Leonardo da Vinci or sort of Picasso or any of these great artists like Monet or whatever. But have a go. It really is fantastic.
Tim, we talked about a few things today. What would be a challenge that you would leave people with that they could take away and just try from what we've discussed today?
I would go with the last thing we've discussed, actually, which is to add another layer to the interaction with nature around you, which is to either pick up a camera and take a photo if you haven't done it before, but really consider what you're doing. Consider the light, look at the light, and really look for that really fantastic picture, because everybody can do this, just really get the eye in. Or, so there's two, you've got a choice. So you can do that, that's the easy method, right? Or the other one is get a sketchbook, have a go. Try to picture, at this time of year, you're not going to get a great, botanical subject to draw, but have a go. Just pick it up and have a go at whatever you've got. You've got bare trees out there, and if you're lucky enough to be able to get to a nearby view that maybe has a wonderful horizon with some bare trees silhouetted on that, just have a go. See what you do. See how it feels. Connect to it.
Nice one. Thank you, Tim. Really do appreciate your time today talking to us about this topic of getting out into nature and finding peace. From that discussion with Tim, what became apparent for me was the importance of bringing life back under control in a moment where there's chaos, there's stresses, there's struggles, or there's upheaval. And creating a pause is the best way to do that. And if you can get out in nature, as Tim's suggesting, just for a few minutes, it can make a world of difference. It can relax your brain and it can allow you to start thinking again. Of course, if you're under a lot of stress and you need longer periods of time, then why not take Tim up on that idea of getting out there and drawing or photographing something and using your brain in a different way that relaxes it and helps it be creative. And when you're in that space, you may actually find it easier to resolve the problems that were causing you stress and struggle. Are you going to take Tim's challenge? Taking a challenge sometimes can be life-changing. I'm going to take Tim's challenge. You can see my findings from this challenge in our challenge roundup video, which is a monthly summary covering all of the challenges our experts have shared. To get that video and all of our latest health and wellness uploads, including interviews and reviews, subscribe and hit the bell so you get notified whenever we post. And if this channel can help your friends and family, please share it with them too. If you want to get proactive with your health, Total Wellness Club are developing health quests over at questly.life. Join while we're developing the site and get access to health quests that immediately personalise your health. You'll get to identify which of 10 critical health categories need your attention. You'll be able to track your progress and you'll be able to help us develop the platform too. I'll put a link in the description and I'll see you in the next video.